Science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM training, is a hot topic in education circles right now. But is it possible to include the arts as part of that trend? Can STEM be turned into STEAM? Integrating the arts into education and education into the arts is not as simple as it sounds. Education expert Kimberly Stephenson is here to make the connection between the arts and technology. Welcome to BexarCast. I'm Randy Lankford, and this is BexarCast, a weekly interview with business, political, education, and nonprofit leaders. We're examining the relationships between all four and how each one benefits from the success of the other three. Kimberly Stephenson is the Director of Education at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts. She earned her bachelor's degree at UTSA and a master's in music education at Texas State University. She earned a second master's and a doctorate in education from Columbia. She's passionate about the vocal health of teachers and the inherent artistry of humanity. Kimberly, thanks for joining me.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
I'm glad to have you. For anyone listening to this anywhere other than San Antonio who may not be familiar with the Tobin Center, let me give you a little rundown. Its goal is to provide a world-class venue that promotes a diverse range of cultural, educational, and artistic experiences that improve the quality of life in San Antonio. And that's a big bite from one apple. But it achieves those goals in just spectacularly. It was founded as the San Antonio Municipal Auditorium. And the Tobin Center rose from the ashes of a devastating fire at the Municipal Auditorium in 1979. When the facility reopened in 1985, it was still the Municipal Auditorium, but in 2014, there was an expansion and a remodeling of the building and the facility, and that's when it became the Tobin. And now it's a $142 million facility that seats 1,700 people and is basically the primary performance venue in San Antonio, home to countless productions, including the annual BexarFest Premier Gala. So I feel like we're kind of running with the big kids when we have our little high school media festival there at the Tobin. That's a level of credibility that you just can't get anywhere else. That when you're in the Tobin, you're in tall cotton, and I'm very proud of that. I make a big point in telling people that.
Well, we're proud to have you.
It's fun. And against that backdrop, now that I've given you a little background of what the Tobin is and what it means to San Antonio, I want to take a couple of seconds to go down the list of objectives that are in your realm of responsibilities as the education director. There's the educational initiative at the Tobin is known as the Next Generation, or Generation Next Education Initiative. And I want to give you a chance to go into depth about this, but let me just run through the list real quickly. The number one goal is to reach students in ways they are not otherwise being reached. That's a big one. It connects students to themselves and each other. Number three, the program transforms the environment for learning. That's another one of my hot buttons. It provides learning opportunities for the adults in the lives of these young people. So there's that intergenerational thing that means a lot. It provides new challenges for those students who are already considered successful. And it connects a learning experience to the real world. And some of those really touch a nerve with me. They're my favorite places. What you're doing there is practically verbatim the list of objectives for BexarFest. And I have to admit, it feels pretty good to be validated. Especially by someone with such great credentials. So tell me about the Generation Next program. Fill in some of those high points that I touched.
All right. So Generation Next was created when the Tobin Center was revamped. It was always in the Tobin Center's plan to have an educational component. Once they began with the new building and they had the new building running, they started launching the educational program. Many performing arts centers have educational components, but the Tobin Center was also founded on a concept of not competing with that which was already in San Antonio.
Okay.
So we wanted to look at how we could fill in the gaps that were existing in San Antonio on the educational field as well as the performing arts field. So Generation Next was created with the idea of filling in some of these empty spaces or boosting what was already there. So we basically do four things. We send education out into the community. So for example, when we bring in professional performing artists, we will not only have experiences here in the building that are field trip experiences where students can come to us,
Right.
but we also send the artists out into the community in order to engage with students who might not be able to make their way into the Tobin Center or to enrich that performance experience. So for example, we just had a children's play that came in to the Tobin Center. Miss Nilsson Has a Field Day.
Okay.
Was the play. And we took two of the actors and sent them out to a local school where they workshopped with the students over not only what is it like to be an actor, but how do you use your body in order to express meaning. And they held a 1-hour workshop with the students. Then the school came in and experienced the play. They had read the book, they had talked about it with their teacher, they had had the experience with the actors, then they saw the production. And so their experience over what this play meant was deepened. One of the other things we do is we do bring the students into the building for experiences. So that particular campus and a couple of other ones as well, when we dismissed everyone after the field trip, we invited them to stay. And then we brought out the actors and the students had a chance to engage with those professional actors again after having seen the show. So it's about deepening and enriching the experience, not only as an art form, but also as this is how people can communicate with each other. This is how I use my body in order to illustrate meaning and to get my purpose more clearly across.
Sure.
And then we're also getting concepts
let me touch
this is
on
something that I can do as a career.
And absolutely, let me touch on a couple of things that you mentioned there. One, going to the student's location, going on their home turf.
Yes.
And letting them interact with performers and talented people, that it kind of brings it home that this isn't foreign anymore. This is happening right here in my own world. And there's no reason I can't do this coming from my own world. Because that's what I find far too often, I'm not going to say a lot, but more often than I want to, is that kids see this and say, well, yeah, that's great if you're born into it, if you have those opportunities. But a kid like me going to a school like mine, I'm never going to have those kind of opportunities. Yes, you do. Yes, you are. Yes, you can. Don't ever sell yourself short. And the backstory that provides the kids to when they go to the performance and they actually see the actors go through their performance, they know what went into it, rather than just let it wash over them. Oh, that was great. I really enjoyed it. What a fun night. They kind of have some understanding of what went into that they didn't just walk out on stage and do it. There's a lot of hard work that goes into making this happen. And they get to see the payoff. They get to see the payoff of that hard work. And then even after it's over, after the performance is over, they get to talk to the performers and let the performers know that was special. That was something I never anticipated and something that I never thought I could do, but now you've got me riled up. I want to do it. So I would think there's a payoff for the performers as well, that they get to have that input into a young person's trajectory, actually. And that's a real important issue to me. I'm glad you're doing that. Thank you.
That concept of personal connection is really important. And it feeds the actors, it feeds the students, and it's something that the Tobin Center does. Generation Next provides this actually after each of our signature series, the Broadway shows that come through.
Right.
We offer a talkback opportunity where we bring the cast out, and anyone who is in the audience who is willing to stay, because usually it takes about 10 minutes for them to get out of costume, but if they're willing to stay, they have a chance to interact with the actors. And what I find interesting and validating is that very seldom do we have these questions of, I'm your biggest fan, and
sure,
how many times have you done this particular thing? That often it's, how can I get into this, or what do you find most fulfilling, or what's the hardest aspect of being away from your family? That's many times it's those deeper questions that help to build a community of understanding.
The practical aspects of it. It's not just fanboy.
Right.
I really think I can do this. Tell me some of the nuts and bolts that I'm going to need to know. That's great. That's great. I'm glad to hear that they're engaging at that level.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing about this, there's also a concept of, if I see the actors in person and engage with them, then the theater feels, which already feels much different than movies or television, that chemistry of being in the same space as the performers, but it also feels more welcoming and inviting. And for some of these students, if their school does not bring them to the Tobin Center, they just won't come.
Right.
And so having this opportunity to engage with the actors helps these students to develop a feeling of the Tobin Center and other performance art venues are someplace I can go and I can have a meaningful experience in this place. Sometimes it can feel a little stratified. We can feel a little siloed. So breaking those silos down is very important for the Tobin Center and for Generation Next.
Absolutely. To let kids know I'm welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I've heard that, interestingly enough, I've heard that from teachers who have participated in Bearfest,
Mm-hmm.
that they bring their kids to the premiere at the Tobin, and the kids walk in with a certain attitude about, yeah, no big deal. I made a movie and we're going to see it. And it's nothing special. Then they walk in and they see the Tobin. And I've had teachers tell me that there are kids in my school that have never been to the Tobin,
Mm-hmm.
never even been downtown. And that kind of, it's a moment that they're overwhelmed, but they very quickly recover and dive in head first.
Mm-hmm.
Just gimme, let me at it. And they can't wait to get inside and explore the space and experience what's going on there. So that's great that you're able to bring that world to kids that might not otherwise, not just the Tobin, but that whole world of theater might not otherwise know about it. That's
yes,
great.
this is a place for everyone, and we want everyone to be able to experience and enjoy having the Tobin Center in San Antonio and having this as a resource and a place to come and do things and build memories with your family.
Absolutely. Some of my favorite memories are there. I want to take a minute to go back over some of the educational agenda items and talk about where they intersect with Bearfest. One of the items on the list was reach students in ways that they're not otherwise being reached, and I paused on that for a minute because Bearfest at its core is an experiential learning program. We provide an opportunity for media students to take what they've learned in the classroom and then apply it out in the wild, in the real world. And there are a couple of reasons for that. We believe there are practical lessons to be learned by putting students in that situation, but there's also the adrenaline rush. It's kind of a new world that I have a real client. I'm telling a real story. There are real consequences to what I'm doing here. So you're just not going to get that in a classroom, or even if you were working on a production in school. If you were making a video about the speech club or whatever organization, it's still in that school environment. And we kind of want to take them out of that environment and put them out in the real world and let them experience what it's like to work in a real production. How does that relate to what you're doing at the Tobin as far as reaching students in ways that are not otherwise being reached?
Well, I'd say that there's a really strong connection, just as you had pointed out. One of the things that Generation Next wants to do is to help elevate that concept of culture within San Antonio and to help people see and experience the variety of diversity that San Antonio owns. I mean, we're Six Flags, right?
Right.
We've got all these different cultures within us, and way more than the six that we actually talk about at Fiesta Texas. So helping people to be able to engage and interact in these cultures in safe ways, learn about communicating with each other, and to help deepen and enrich that cultural experience within San Antonio. We make connections between the productions that come into the building. So, for example, I saw a rich opportunity when we had Legally Blonde come through.
Oh.
I contacted a lawyer at St. Mary's University who teaches law. She also has started an organization that matches up and coming female lawyers with female lawyers who will act as their mentors. And I asked her to come into the Tobin Center, and she presented over the history of women in law just before Legally Blonde.
Okay.
And it was amazing because I was expecting to have, a few people who would wander through who got to the building early, but we actually had quite a few women. We had quite a few lawyers. We had young people who were not in the field or studying to be in the field. And we had many boys who were in the audience as well. And that concept of here's a history, you're coming for this particular production, here's a history that is relevant and exciting, and you can learn about it and talk about it in interesting ways, and you're deepened and enriched for having been a part of this experience.
Right.
We're moving to create a model where these are not based upon someone having purchased tickets, where these will be attainable. You can come to these productions even if you haven't bought a ticket to the show. So that's something that's on our agenda to do. But one of the other things that Generation Next does is provide professional development for teachers, and it's based upon the concept of arts integration. We are establishing ourselves to help work with the city to define what it means to have the A in STEAM.
STEAM, right.
Mm-hmm. Many schools have science, technology, engineering, and math. They talk about it, or they say that it's part of their overall campus plan. But to become to STEAM from STEM is often almost arbitrary.
Right.
And so to define what the A means to make a standard of experience for our students in San Antonio. We use the Kennedy Center's definition of arts integration, which can be fairly long, but basically it sums up into experiential learning, and it's put into place by the teacher. So we work with teachers in San Antonio, providing professional development on how to integrate the arts into learning. And here's how I'm going to connect that to what you originally said.
Okay.
One of the powerful experiences in arts integration is the concept of your learning becomes cultural because you're bringing yourself
right
to your learning. You're bringing everything that you have within you to these experiences whenever you are engaging in demonstrating learning through the arts. That concept of culture, it's in our brains software. It's in how we think and how we perceive. It's how we represent ourselves, but it's also how we talk about ourselves. It's how we develop relationships, and it's a part of our culture. So if we can engage students in safe ways and have them thinking and learning and processing and interacting with each other regarding this concept of culture, then we're breaking down barriers, we're releasing walls, we're escaping from our silos, and we're encountering and challenging some of the biases that we have just built into our culture. You don't have to have someone who is engaging actually against you
right
in order to be experiencing the result of bias. So working to help students engage with each other over their culture and over what they experience at home, not just the superficial culture, who's the superhero, who's in the latest movie, but the deeply embedded cultures that we experience through our homes and our communities that inform us as to who we are. Having our students and our teachers learn how to engage in that way it's life-changing. It's
absolutely
community-changing.
Absolutely. And that dovetails very well into my next point, is that your program connects students to themselves and each other. That and each other is pretty important. When we created BexarFest, we created it from the beginning, from the get-go, as a team event. There are no individual categories. And it also culminates in that premiere where all the teams from different schools, different districts, different towns, different cultures, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic strata, all come together in the same place. Tonight, we're all the same. We're filmmakers, we're storytellers. Let's share. And so it's encouraging to me, and what I've heard is the faculty, the coaches tell me that kids kind of come out of their shell during the course of the production. That, I'm fine with being behind the camera. I don't need to make a lot of noise. Just let me push a couple of buttons and I'm good. But as they develop the program, as they get involved in the production, they suddenly have opinions. and they feel like they need to express them. And so it creates that dialogue that otherwise these kids, I'm fine. I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to share. I'm good. Well, no, I do need to share because I have some feelings about this. And so there were a couple of reasons we built the festival that way. From a practical perspective, it's media production is a team effort. Nobody makes a video by themselves. Nobody makes a podcast by themselves. But also it's a way to show students that you're not as weird as you think you are. There are other people at other schools with the same passion that you have that are just as excited and just as devoted to what they're doing. And you expressed it very well, the value of bringing that diverse student population together, that under this roof, we're all the same. We've all got the same objectives. We all got the same tools. We've all got, but it's interesting that I'll move on to my next point because it flows so easily, that we're connecting learning to experiences in the real world. Mm-hmm. And again, it comes back to the way Bearfest was designed. We could have just as easily created a festival where each school makes a video about their school. Tell us about an organization at your school. Tell us about the band or whatever. But that's not what we wanted to do. That's not the objective here. We pair each school with a nonprofit organization, and then it's the team's job to go out and tell that organization's story. And that works in a couple of ways. Rather than have the students just take a tour of a nonprofit organization or spend an afternoon volunteering and delivering groceries or washing blankets or spending an afternoon engaged. No, we embed them in a nonprofit for weeks. Mm-hmm. And so they not only learn what the nonprofit does, but they learn why they do it. And then once you have that information, okay, now put it in your own words. Now run it through your filter, the one that's in your head, whether you realize it or not. Run it through that filter and tell it in your way. Because the nonprofit, they have, we know our story. Let me hear what you think our story is. And so they work on their productions for several weeks and they gain a deep understanding of what the client organization does. And then they have to turn it around and explain it in a compelling way in their own words. You help me understand the value of that. I feel, I'm not a scholar, but I feel like that's a good thing.
It is a very good thing. Absolutely it is.
So is there any way that we are, and I'd like to think, is there any way that we are enhancing what you do?
Absolutely. And I would say that part of what Generation Next does, especially given the professional development component of what we do, part of the Kennedy Center's method of arts integration is deliberately putting students in the position of holding these academic conversations. How do you talk with other people? And how do you talk with other people when there are guidelines of everyone is to participate and everyone is to generate ideas and everyone needs to be reflected in the end product and everyone must participate.
Right.
So you can't have that one person who's, as you said, oh, you know what, I'm just going to stand back here and touch a few buttons and then, I don't need to interact. Everyone needs to interact. Right. Everyone needs to be a part of this. But that concept of how do you talk with someone else? We often expect students to just arrive at school having this incredibly well-developed set of social skills. Mm-hmm. But especially as the age for students enrolling in school gets younger and younger and younger, right. That's just not developmentally appropriate to expect everyone to be operating at this high level. And often the way schools are viewed is that you're here to teach this number of things, and yet somehow students are just supposed to become practiced in how to hold these conversations. So part of what we do through the Kennedy Center's work with arts integration is we deliberately instill places in the lessons, short little places, 1 or 2 minutes at a time, where students are given time to practice. How do you talk to other people? And how do you collaborate? Not just talk, because people will say, well, this is my idea, and then, mic drop, they're done.
Right. Yeah.
But how do you collaborate? How do you actually work with someone else to take these ideas you've put together and then to nuance them and to turn them into a project that reflects everyone? That means dealing with not just another person as being another human, but also honoring and recognizing what they bring to the table.
Right.
And what they bring to the table is often based in the diversity of our experience. We're talking about a variety of cultures and cultural input that comes in, as well as people's ideas that they hold as individuals. It's about teaching a teacher and working with students to take that classroom of individuals and to turn them into collaborative units. And that's what I see happening in BexarFest.
Right. You take all those individuals and make them a team.
Right.
You're going to become a team whether you want to or not. This is how the process works.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things, and I'd like to get your take on this, one of the other things about the festival is that we put high school kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, in positions of not necessarily authority, but on a level, in a peer position with adults.
Mm-hmm.
So in their experience, it's always been parent-child, teacher-student, authority-kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's vendor-client.
Yes.
That you better have your opinions and you better be able to express them and you better be able to make your client understand what you got in mind and pitch it to them and take their feedback and incorporate it. And pretty much what you're saying is, you mentioned kids are coming to school younger and younger, expected to have social skills. Well, when your whole world has been 4 or 5 people,
mm-hmm.
and now your world suddenly got much, much bigger, that, there are other perspectives and there are other ways of expressing yourself. I better learn how to do that. So yeah, I'm with you. And I appreciate what you're validating for me. I feel better.
Well, and one of the things that we do as well is the concept of arts integration is where the teacher sets in place the expectations and the experience, and then the teacher releases that. And it's the students who are generating the work. They have a framework, but it's the students who are generating the work. So the teacher is there now as a facilitator, not as the main force of guidance.
Right.
So there is no concept of I'm going to mimic what the teacher has done, because the teacher has put you in this position and then released you to create what you will.
Right. Yeah, and we do that. I've done that very deliberately, but after the first year of the festival, it occurred to me that when we pair these students with a nonprofit organization and say, go forth and be creative, we were kind of throwing them into the deep end of the pool without a lot of preparation. So now we have a series of technical workshops where, we're going to give you a little bit on video production. We're going to give you a little bit on audio production. We're going to give you a little bit on project management, because that's where I see is the biggest, oh my gosh, moment for these kids.
Yes.
We're going to make 5, 6 different forms of media over the course of 6 weeks, and 12 people working on it with 2 or 3 client representatives. And then we're going to pull it all together for one night.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you?
Yep.
And how much experience do you have at that? Here's a little cheat sheet. You're going to need a spreadsheet. And so the value, I feel there's real value in connecting people in a learning situation, the students, with people who have been there. And I'm not your mentor. I'm not here to do it for you, but ask me any questions. I'll be glad to answer. And I think there is the teaching of learning how to ask questions.
Oh, yes.
Don't be shy. Don't be self-conscious. If you've never done this before, there's no reason you should know how to do it. So feel free to ask questions.
And there's a concept of, in learning how to do something and having that scaffolding put into place of, this is how this works, this is how this works, this is how this works. Now you've had these experiences, so here's your next step. There's also the concept of learning the difference between questions and learning how to ask good questions,
Right.
questions that really get to the heart of what you need. And that's something that has to be practiced too.
Right. Right. And we're giving them plenty of opportunity. Giving
Yes.
them lots of chances to ask questions, both in the theater and in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your insight. I appreciate your help, and I appreciate what you and the Tobin are doing for students in San Antonio. It's great.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing with BearFest. It's incredibly exciting to watch and to see everyone as they come for this just magnificent night.
That is a kick. I do enjoy that night when I see the kids get their breath taken away and then suddenly they catch it again. That's good. That's fun.
Indeed.
Well, thank you so much. Take care.
And you as well.
All right.